Welcome to today's video. There are 7 verbs total that we use to talk about the weather, and I will go one by one. The first verb that we use to talk about the weather is the verbo haber in the form of I. And we use I in the same way that we use I to express existence. It has to be a visual experience, and in general, we use it with nouns. So I will present 3 cases. Hay sol, hay nubes, y hay viento. You can intensify those 3 nouns if you want to with an adjective. Hay mucho sol. Why mucho? Because sol is masculine and it's an adjective. With nubes, you can do exactly the same thing. And this is important so you can see how you use the adjective mucho. In this case, muchas, because nubes is feminine. Hay muchas nubes. And hay viento. You can also say hay mucho viento if you want. Right? Those 3 has to be visual experience. The second verb that we use to talk about the weather, and we use it also with nouns, is the verbo hacer. We use hacer in the form of third person singular conjugation, meaning hace all the time. Why hace? Because we are talking about the weather, and the weather is a third person to us, right? So, hace sol, hace viento. We do not use nubes. Be careful with that. For some reason, we don't see that the weather produces clouds, or hace, or do, if we are using the translation of hacer. Calor, frío. And those calor and frío here are nouns. In particular, frío can be also an adjective. But here, when we are talking about the weather, hace sol, hace viento, hace calor, and hace frío, we are seeing those 2 expressions as nouns. Therefore, you can intensify it using the adjectives. And you can use, it's very common to use mucho. So you can say hace mucho sol, like with I, hace mucho viento, hace mucho calor, and hace mucho frío. In all those cases, since these 4 are nouns, you can intensify the experience using the adjective mucho. Now, these are not the only expression that you can do with hacer. You can also express through hacer. Like if it's a good weather, you can say hace buen tiempo. Buen tiempo, buen is an adjective itself, so you don't need mucho there. So buen tiempo is substituting mucho. Hace buen tiempo. It's a nice weather, it's nice out, right? If you can have buen tiempo, you can also have mal tiempo. Hace mal tiempo. Mal is also an adjective, therefore you don't need another adjective. Notice that bueno, that is the basic adjective, and malo, that is the basic adjective, draws the O in front of masculine noun and becomes buen tiempo, mal tiempo. Right? Let's move on. The next verb that we can use is the verbo estar. And now that I'm talking about estar, I want to caution you, we hardly use verbo ser. We use in general verbo estar. If you want to use the verbo to be, it has to be verbo estar. Now, we use estar in 2 ways. We use estar with adjectives because the weather is conditions. And if you don't like the weather, wait a minute, as we say here in New England, right? So, está soleado. This is an adjective. It's very common in Spanish to have adjectives that end in ado or ido. Está soleado means it is sunny. Está caliente. The adjective here, caliente, is expressing how the weather is. Está nublado. See the ending one more time? Very similar to soleado. That means that this is an adjective. So, está nublado. It is cloudy. Está ventoso. It is windy. So, all these, and there are more that you can find, but these are very common. What we are expressing, in particular with verbo estar, are conditions. That's why we use está rather than verbo ser. Okay? The second form that we use the verbo estar is as progressive actions. And there is only 2 progressive situations in Spanish. You can say está nevando, right? and I will explain why we came into this ando, right? Remember the progressive tense is the verb ending in R. You change that ing as ando, right? What is the verb behind nevando? It's the verb nevar, to snow, right? And I will talk about that in a moment. So nevar becomes nevando. Está nevando. What we are expressing? We are expressing an ongoing action, an action that is occurring right now and is ongoing. That's why we can say está nevando, and we use the verbo estar as a progressive action. The second situation, very similar to this, is está lloviendo. Do you remember how we ended with this yendo, right? If the verb ending in er or ir, right? Remember, we will place yendo as the ing. What is the verb behind this? The verb is llover. Therefore, you erase the family, right? And you have Jov as a stem, and you put yendo there, right? So, lloviendo. Está lloviendo means it is raining. Now, verb number 4 that we use. You can use the verbo llover directly. Now, the verbo llover as well as the verbo nevar that we will see in a moment are impersonal verbs. What that means? That you only can apply it to the weather, not to human beings. So it will be only one conjugation, right? So the verbo is llover, to rain in English, right? How we do this? Llueve. Right? It rains, right? Llueve. Notice the tense change here in the verb, right? This O becomes UE. That's a pattern in Spanish. We will study that in chapter 5. This is the last topic, by the way, of chapter 4, if you are following my book, Vámonos. And this will be one of the patterns in the tense changing verbs. The other one is nevar. Very similar to the same two verbs that we use in progressive tenses, you can use it as impersonal verbs. So the second verb that you can use is nevar. Nevar is also a tense-changing verb. Nieva, almost like if you say it snows, right? Nieva. Notice this. That's another tense-changing verb, right? This e becomes ie. We will study that in chapter 5 one more time. This is the only conjugation that we will do. Why? Because it's an impersonal verb that only apply to the weather, and this will be number 5, by the way. These are the 5 verbs that we use with the weather. But in Spanish, and I am assuming that in English is the same, you can talk about how you perceive the weather, and this will be verb number 6. And that's the verbo tener. Right? And it comes down only in 2 situations, either calor or frío. You cannot use it beyond these 2 elements. I am cold, I am hot. That will be the expression in English, right? So you conjugate the verbo tener according to your subject, and you keep the noun calor or frío. For instance, we can say, María tiene calor. Sergio, as you can see me with this sweater, tiene frío. Now, since calor and frío are nouns, you can intensify that as well using an adjective. You can say mucho or you can say poco, and you have to put it in front of the noun. We will say María tiene poco calor. And we will say Sergio tiene mucho frío. Now the last verb that I will refer is the verbo sentir. Tener and sentir related to the weather is pretty much expressing how you react to these 2 weather situations. Right? Sentir then, right? Now you have to conjugate exactly like with tener. You have to conjugate the verbo sentir. And I will erase just here, I will use the same verbs. Sentir is María siente. It's another tense change verb. See that the change into ie, exactly like nevar, the same type of change. So sentir is an tense change verb. María siente poco calor. Sergio siente mucho frío. I hope that you find this topic interesting and easy to control. It's a very common topic. It's very common to talk about the weather in meetings. It's an easy topic to break the ice. So hopefully you will start using these verbs to talk about the weather. Before I close the video, I want to invite you to visit my webpage. You will find the link down there. And remember my mantra, there is no other way to advance in our target language than practicing. So practice, practice, and practice. And this is an easy topic to practice. It's an easy topic to break the ice. So practice talking about the weather and you will feel very empowered to progress in the language. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So long for now.